Hello and welcome back to the Northside Coin Club YouTube channel. Please consider subscribing. Once we have 50 subscribers, we can live stream our meetings. This video is from our December 2024 meeting. The presenter was Dan Carr of Clark Gruber in the Moonlight Mint. He designs and mints metals in his studio in Loveland, Colorado on a surplus Denver Mint press. Please check out the description below to learn more about the work that Dan does. He's speaking tonight on Colorado Silver Rounds, which is very fitting because he's continuing the legacy of minting metals in Colorado. He's an excellent Colorado numismatic historian, and the Northside Coin Club appreciates his efforts. Please consider subscribing and enjoy the video.
I'm not going to cover everything because there's too much involved to do it all. So there's certain categories I'm not going to get into that much. Like, for example, casino tokens. I'm not going to cover those. I'm not going to do sports related ones, like Broncos ones or whatever. But the ones I want to focus on are like commemorative in nature and ones that are historically, significant in some way or another. Got one more light over here. That's it. All right. It's not bad. All right. So I'm just going to go through some of the different ones that I've managed to collect or see over the years, and we'll go from there. So this is the first one. This is the oldest silver round that I know of. And when I say silver round, I also mean a non-monetary, not monetized or legal tender piece. Now you may wonder, why is this Colorado related? Because it says Kansas City Smelting and Refining Company on there. I just put this one in here because it was a company that refined a lot of the ore that came from Colorado. So these may have actually even been made from silver that came from Colorado. We're not sure, but this is one of many so-called dollars. If you're familiar with the term so-called dollar, it means a type of metal that is roughly the size of a dollar coin that was commemorative in nature and sold as a souvenir. But this one is fairly rare. I've only seen maybe 3 or 4 of these ever. A nice one like this is probably going to run $300 to $500. But as you can see, 1889, and it has a depiction of the United Americas on the other side. This is the first one that's more explicitly Colorado. Of course, the lesser dollars, as they're called, they're also listed as so-called dollars, but they're also listed in the Red Book. And these are pretty valuable. They're definitely the most valuable Colorado silver rounds of any kind. There's different kinds of lesser dollars, of course. Some of them have imprints, some of them don't. This one is the only type where they have a reference to something outside Colorado, and that's because this J.F. Nelson and Company, Holdridge, Nebraska, they was a merchant that sold clothing and whatnot, and different merchants signed up to participate in these lesser tokens, which lesser made these to promote the use of silver as money, because at the time gold was the favored asset at banks and things like that, and silver was somewhat shunned a little bit at the time, and so Joseph Lesher wanted these, made these as a way to promote silver. This being the Nelson one is quite a bit rarer than most of them. Your typical Lesher dollar is going to cost about $1,500 and up, depending on the condition for the common one. This one being a rare one and being probably the nicest one known of that type, this is about a $30,000 piece. This is, of course, you look at that and say, well, this one actually is monetized. I included this one because it is I consider it a Colorado round because it's a 1921 D Morgan dollar. But most people have never seen one of these, but it's got some engraving over here. And it's hard to see in that picture. I'll bring up the next picture so you can see what it is. The 7th dollar released from the first 100 ever coined at Denver Mint, Thomas Annear, superintendent. So there was a fellow who was a friend of Thomas Annear who apparently got the first 100 silver dollars that were released from the Denver Mint. And of course, the Denver Mint started making coins in 1906, but they didn't make silver dollars until 1921. So this is the first year for silver dollars from Denver. So this fellow, he got 100 of them from the superintendent. They were the first 100 released. They were not necessarily the first 100 struck, but they were the first 100 that were released from the Denver Mint. And his plan was to get all 100 of them engraved like this. Well, it turned out to be very arduous and problematic with the engraving. The engraving was done outside the mint by a private engraver. And so what they ended up doing was abandoned it after number 12. And numbers 1 and 2 weren't engraved at all. They were given to the two Colorado senators, who in turn, one of them was given to the Colorado Historical Society, and the other one was given to the School of Mines. And neither one of those first two are known where they are. They're missing. Nobody knows what happened to them, and there'd be no way to identify them now anyway, because they weren't the first two struck; they're the first two released. So you can't go by the die state or anything like that. But anyway, so it ends up that only number 3 through 12 are actually engraved like this. I actually own this one, but I've had a hard time getting one of the grading companies to certify, because the other ones are certified, but there's no auction records for this number 7, except when all 12 were originally, not 12, when the original 10 were sold in 1922 at an auction. They're all sold in order. And number 7 never showed up in any auction since then. And so the grading companies kind of balk at grading it. Whereas like some of the other numbers, like number 12 or whatever, has been auctioned a few times over the years, and they look it up in an old auction from 1945 or 1962, and then they'll certify it. But this one they won't. They don't want to certify it. But I don't know, in a way, I think it's good. I mean, there are no auction records for it, so it's not like it's a copy of one that's been out there. So, but these are fairly valuable. I've seen these priced anywhere from like $6,000 to $20,000, but a reasonable price for one of these for any one 3 through 12 would be, depending on the condition, about $8,000 to $10,000 probably. Now we get into what are the meat of it, what I would really call real silver rounds from Colorado. These are the 1933 Century of Progress Exposition ones, and these were made to raise money for the Colorado building at the 1933 Chicago World's Fair. And all 3 of these here are actually different. This one on the far left has the word "to Colorado" on it, and then the one here, the next one, doesn't have it, and then of course the one on the right is completely different. These are quite collectible vintage silver rounds and bars that have been in a hot market for the last several years, and these are not particularly hard to get, but you can, if you find these, if you can get them for like 100, that's a really good deal. But usually they're going to be around $150 to $250 for these kind of things. They also, some of them will come in a folder. You can get a folder from 1933, a cardboard folder that has like a presentation thing that either has 1 or 3 in it. I have the one that has 1 in it. I don't have the one that has 3 in it. Do any of you guys who work at Tebow recognize this handwriting? I don't know. So I went into Tebow. This is several. I don't know how many years ago. This is probably could have been 10 years ago. And I saw this in one of the rotary cases. And I saw it, and I thought, oh, I like these. I buy these when I see them. And I saw $29.95. I thought, wow, that is a rip. And I thought, I'm going to buy that for sure. So, but I didn't want to be rude, so I had them pull it out, and I looked at it. And I said, I see you have it marked at $29.95. And I asked sorry, I can't remember who it was helped me. I said, what, is this really what you need to get for it? And I thought they were going to come back and say $129.95 is what they wanted. But he came back and said, no, we'll take 25. So I bought it for 25. It's like a $150 item at least. So anyway, that was a good deal. This is another group of 1933 Century of Progress silver rounds. The one on the left, this one here, is fairly common. You see them pretty often. There were about 10,000 of that one made, but they're still really popular. They have a neat mining scene design on it, sort of like a lesser dollar scene in a way. That's probably where they got the inspiration for it. And of course, it's 1933 World's Fair. These typically will trade like a circulated worn one, maybe $50 for a low end one. A really nice uncirculated high grade like slabbed MS64, 65 might be a couple hundred. The one in the middle is not a Colorado one, but it looks very similar, but it's Montana. The Montana one, but if you look at everything about it, is very similar to the Colorado one. Everything about the way it was made, the way the design was laid out. So I think that all 3 of these were made by Sachs Lawler and Company in Denver. That was a company that made privately made, like they made rubber stamps and marking devices and dies and all kinds of things. So I think Sachs Lawler and Company made all three of these, and so they made these from Montana. Now the Colorado one here on the left is a mintage of 10,000. The Montana one, I think, they're reportedly only mintage of only 1,000, so it's quite a bit more. So it's going to be like $200 to $500 for the Montana one, for a nice one. The one on the far right is a simpler design. It doesn't have a mining scene on it, but it's got a note here to Pedley Ryan and Company, who was like a commodities trading, financial trading company in Denver. And you'll see on the next screen that there are some more Pedley Ryan pieces out there. But this one is what we call the die stamped Pedley Ryan. And it's not an imprinted one, but it's actually struck by the normal die. These are quite rare. Reportedly, only 50 of these were ever made. And these sell for 4,000 to 6,000. So if you ever see that one, you should buy it if you get a good price on it. A friend of mine, I got this. This is just like that one, that the silver one, the Colorado on the previous screen, they had 10,000 minutes. But he showed me this one that was a copper one, and it's uniface. It didn't have anything on the other side. And Annex called it a die trial in copper. They made a mistake here. H and H. It should be H and K, which would be the so-called dollar reference book. But 870 is the so-called dollar number for the silver version of this. But I looked at this carefully, and I think this one's a casting. So if you see these, I've seen 2 or 3 of this bronze version, and so I think they're probably an old casting that was made, and I think it was blank on the back because it was made to affix that onto some object. I don't know what, but they're still unusual, but they're not worth a huge amount. But something like this might be worth a couple $100. But just be aware that it's a casting and not a struck one. This is a piece of aluminum. It is a die trial. I saw this at a friend of mine had this for sale, and it's the same die that was used on one of the other 1933 Colorado ones. And I saw this and I thought, well, that's pretty neat. And I ended up buying that because I convinced myself that it was a real die trial for that silver round. If you look at it, it's got these little defects in the letters, and both this aluminum piece here and the actual silver pieces that I have both have those two things. So I'm sure it was the same die, which is good. It's probably, as a die trial for a so-called dollar, that's probably a $600 item. Now here's the other Pedley Ryans. Again, I said Pedley Ryan was a commodities trading company in Denver, and they had, oops, I set the wrong mode here, I think. Okay. Pedley Ryan was a commodity trading company. Sorry, it wants to go on an automatic thing now. I can't seem to get it to stop. They reportedly had sex. Sorry. No. All these different buttons I've never had to use before. My apologies. I don't know if it'll stay now or not. No. Might have to stop this because it. All right, hold on. Let's see if we get. So the blanks were made by Sachs Lawler and Company, and they had a woman in the front office that would mark these with a hammer. And so there's a lot of varieties on these, on errors on the markings and whatnot. Yeah, that's really annoying. Sorry. Let me try this one more time. I might have to shut this off and turn it on again. Let me do that. Sorry. Let me turn this off and bring it back on again. While we're waiting for this to come on again, questions so far on anything?
Where was Pedley Ryan? Like in
Denver? They were in Denver. I don't know the exact address, but they were located in somewhere in the financial area of Denver. All right, we'll get it back up. Yes.
What got you into Colorado?
Well, I grew up here, of course, and I always liked silver and bullion items like that. So that's something I've always collected. Now I'm not getting anything. Oh, here we go. All right. So, you know, I like kind of vintage bullion things. That's something I always collected, and combined, of course, with Colorado, is just seemed like a natural thing to collect. All right, let's get back here.
Do ingots kind of fall into this, or is that?
Yeah, I do collect vintage ingots, and that's another talk I could give sometime. We've got a few Colorado ingots, or ingots that were made in Colorado or have Colorado references on them. So these are, each one of these columns here is a different type of Pedley Ryan, and these are also listed in the so-called dollar reference. They're all 1 ounce of silver roughly, but the specifications can vary. Some sources say they're 90% fine, others say something else. But the one on the left here has Pedley Ryan and Company, Denver, on both sides. The next one over is Pedley Ryan and Company on one side, and then it says 1 ounce silver, 90% fine. It's hard to see, but there's the word fine right there. Then the next one has the same thing, but it does not have the word fine. And then you have the one that has 430 grains. Now, you know, it might know 480 grains is a troy ounce, so this is not quite a troy ounce on these. And then there was a company in Colorado Springs, like a department store, that got Pedley Ryan pieces, and then they counterstamped Robbins on the corner on there. And there's Robbins on the corner above Pedley Ryan and Company, and also there's some exists with it down below. And then there's yet another type that's similar, but it's not really Colorado, but it's the Sterling Investment Company, Reno, Nevada, and it's a very similar one. I think they saw what Pedley Ryan was doing, and they decided to be a copycat and kind of do some themselves. But I believe all the blanks for all these and all the stamps were made by Sachs Lawler in Denver. The rarest one of all these is this one here that has the word fine on it. The most common one is this one. This one here, you see them pretty often. They used to sell for like $40 or $30. I remember going on eBay once, and somebody had some weird antiques category far away from the coins category. A person had 3 of these listed in one lot, and I got all 3 of them for like $70. And then the lady who was selling said, "Oh, I found them taped to the bottom of an old chair." And sure enough, when they came, they had like tape across them. You know, they were still stuck to the tape. I put them out in acetone and got it off. But anyway, they used to only be worth, you know, $30, $40, but now they sell for $100 to $200 pretty often. This one, even the common one. The rare one here, that's a few $1,000s for the one that has the word fine on it. There's also one that's lacking the word Denver. The only one I don't have is there's one that says it's like this one right here, except the word Denver is missing, and it's been listed as a so-called dollar variety, you know, without the word Denver on it. But really, all it was imagine holding a punch and you're hitting it with a hammer, and it's got Pedley Ryan and Company and the word Denver on the punch. Well, if you tilt the punch that way and hit it with a hammer, you might not get the word Denver stamped at all. And all the ones I've seen where it doesn't have the word Denver on it, the Pedley Ryan and Company, all the letters are strong at the top of the letters and weak at the bottom. So that's it's more of an error than a real minting variety. Here's one that's a little bit strange. It has Denver, but you see Denver at an angle compared to Pedley Ryan and Company, and it has this weird 1929, but the one is kind of like a backwards one or an I with a serif broken off of it. I'm not sure, but I think they were trying to make it say 1929 for whatever reason, we don't know. But again, this is one where they punched it once, and see Pedley Ryan is strong at the top and weak at the bottom, so the word Denver didn't show up. So then they come to punch it again to get the word Denver on there, but they didn't want to punch Pedley Ryan twice, so they tilted it the other way to get Denver on there, and so then the baselines are not parallel on it because of that. But this 1929 one, there are auction records for that one going back to the 1940s or 50s of the 1929, and the auction description for one of them indicates that there were only 3 known or 3 made of this one with the 1929 on it. I was lucky and found this at a Denver coin show one time. But the 1929, you can see the toning down in the letters. It looks like it matches the kind of toning you see down here. So I'm sure it was been there for a long time. It wasn't added later. This is the card that came with it. It said it was part of the Al Overton collection. If you know, Al Overton was famous for doing all the was he the bust $half varieties? Yeah. Well, he lived in Colorado and he collected things, and this was in his collection apparently. Here's another one. A friend of mine has one of the other three that we know of, and his there's got parallel baseline. So this was stamped in one pass, whereas mine was stamped in two passes. Here's a more modern one. This is a centenary of the Pony Express, Denver, 1860, which seems kind of strange though, because the Pony Express, it didn't actually go through Denver. They probably had a branch that would come to Denver, but it went through Julesburg in Colorado, but mostly through Wyoming to go to California. These were made, I think, by Wendell Northwestern in Minneapolis. But these are another so-called dollar made by a fellow called Noli Mummy, who was a famous researcher and author and numismatist in the Denver area. He was the one that had these made. And these are pretty, even though they're only from 1960, they're still pretty valuable. One of these you could get a couple $100 for. Noli Mummy also had these. Why this was made, I don't know, but here's issued at Denver, 1961. It has the Confederate seal on it. These are fairly scarce too, and this is another Noli Mummy item. This is probably a couple $100 if you could find one. Now we get to some more modern ones here. Here's a Greeley one, 1970. This is the box. I finally found one that came in the original box, and it had this Steph Enterprises Greeley, Fort Collins, Boulder. So that's who designed that one. Here's a Pueblo one. These are actually sterling silver. It's a 1 ounce, not exactly a 1 ounce because it's sterling, but it's got the little flying F mark here. That means it's a Franklin Mint product. These are fairly common. There's brass or bronze ones of these, I think, out there. They're pretty common. The silver ones, you can find them pretty regularly. They're probably a $20, $30 item. Here's another Pueblo one. This is Medallic Art Company. Some people call it Mako. These are $9.99 silver. And these you can find fairly easily too. They're a little bit more than silver, but not a lot. Now this one is quite a bit rare. These are fairly common in the brass version. You normally, when you see these, they're almost always going to be like like an antique brass, where they like take brass and they give it a matte finish and they put like a patina on, and then they wire brush it across the top to get the highlights lighter. The brass one is pretty common. You see them all the time. I think there's aluminum or copper nickel ones. You see those also, but the silver one is pretty rare, and this is an actual silver one. I don't know if you know, Platteville was where the nuclear reactor still is, but it's not really active. But a couple of years ago, I had told my daughter, "Oh, we should watch that Chernobyl series. There's this really good series about Chernobyl. It's like a 5-episode thing. It's really good if you haven't seen it." And after we watched it, and I told her, you know, Chernobyl is a graphite core reactor, and there's only one other graphite core reactor in the entire world. And she says, "Oh, where is it?" I said, "Oh, it's about 25 miles from here." And she's like, "Oh," she's like freaking out. I said, "Well, it's been shut down for many years, so there's no danger from it." But I've only seen 1 or 2 silver of this one. I also like that it's the original proof-like and not the antique version that they kind of put on a lot of them. These I've been trying to collect. This is a guy, Mike Dugan apparently was his name, and he had a little gift shop in Empire, Colorado. I don't know if you know Empire, but if you get off I-70 on Highway 40 to go towards Winter Park, it's like a little mining town. Not much of a town really anymore, but apparently he made these and sold them in his gift shop. And he made them with different towns, like here's like Georgetown, and here's Goldbug Mines, Empire, Colorado. That was his place, and then Idaho Springs and whatnot. And there's 2 different sizes. There's a little bit smaller ones and there's larger ones, and they're all blank on the back. But for some reason, I've kind of find this fascinating, and it's strange, but this is the kind of thing that people who collect ingots really like, because it's like a piece of silver that was made for the value of the silver, and then got an imprint kind of strike on it, like a bar or an ingot would have. I'm actually buying these at like $100 and up. and even way more if I don't have one. But there's a guy in California of all places who also is after these, so we're always like competing to get them all. He's got some that I don't have, and I have some that he doesn't have. But there's here's the article from Tams about them. This article is kind of strange though, because the author of this article made it really alarmist tone that like these are dangerous like forgeries, and people are going to get fooled into thinking that they're like old mining, ingots and things like that. But I mean, come on, some of them say 1974 on there. I mean, I think the guy was a little bit overboard with it, but they're quite collectible now. This is all the different types that I've identified so far. There's everything from Aspen, Blackhawk. I don't have a Blackhawk one at all, but my friend has got a Blackhawk one, but I've got the Silverton one that he doesn't have. So then there may be other ones out there, but these are just the ones that have turned up so far. But if you see any of these, set them aside because I want to see them. Here's another just generic Cripple Creek. So I wasn't really getting into casino ones. I don't consider this a casino one because I think this was made well before the casinos came to the mountain mining towns. But just kind of a generic silver round. These are not real rare, but I don't see a lot of them. Maybe I've seen a few dozen. This is a U.S. Mint medal for the Colorado Sesquicentennial, or Centennial of Colorado, and the Bicentennial of the United States. These they made these in bronze and gold-plated bronze and silver, and they also made some in gold. The gold ones, they only made 100 of them. So if you find one in gold, they're a good item. Yes, it was a wooden box, and they're naked in a wooden box. There's like a velvet lining with a little circular depression, and they sit down in that. And then you open up the box, there's a little brass tag on the underside of the lid that says something about 100 struck and all that. They were given away at some fancy dinner, and you would think that a lot of them would have gotten impaired because they're naked in the thing, and people pick them up and they fondle them, or I could see them like looking up at the dinner and dropping on the floor and whatnot. But I haven't seen many that are really impaired on the gold ones. They all seem to be pretty nice shape so far, but I do have a gold one. But actually, at 100 minted on the gold one, that's one of the rarest things ever made at the Denver Mint, if you just go by the straight mintage. Here's a Custer County one. This one is, for a long time, I didn't even know that they had these in silver, but most of the time you see these in bronze, but this one here is marked on the edge silver. They're not real rare, but not too easy to find either. For some reason, this is one of my favorite ones because these are really rare. They're 3 different kinds. They're all from Rico, Colorado, which is a small mining town, southwest Colorado. And why they made 3 different kinds, I don't know, but I've seen a total of 6 of these. If you took all 3 designs combined, I've seen 6 ever. And I did buy one from Tammy's shop a while back. By the way, if you ever go to Tammy's shop, there's a really nice selection of like silver rounds and things like that. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, go there. But I can't remember which one I got. I think this is the one. Yeah, that's because I remember seeing it in the case, and I remember seeing these funky figures right there. I said, that looks vaguely familiar. And then I turned it over, and then it's the Rico one. So, yeah, I had years and years ago, I had a damage. I had one of these first 2. I can't remember which one I had, but it was damaged, so I sold it. And then like years later, I said, I should have kept it because I had never seen another one after that. But later I was able to get the collection of the 3. But why they made 3, I don't know. But they're quite rare. I know I wasn't getting into coin club medals, but Colorado Wyoming Numismatic Association is, of course, defunct. They made a lot of aluminum and brass and bronze pieces, but silver ones are a bit scarcer. This is a 25th Jubilee 1977 one, a little bit better item. This is a really crude looking piece. Most of these that I've seen are cast lead, but this one's actually silver. And what I noticed about these is that the silver ones have this square with a number in it, apparently, whereas the lead ones, the lead one I have does not have that square at all. But these are not die struck; they're actually just poured into a mold. But it's pretty rare. The Louisville one, I've only seen 1 or 2 of the silver, and maybe a dozen of the lead ones. There's a Grand Junction one. Again, this is the one where you see it really often. You see it in brass or bronze all the time, but silver you don't see as much. There's an Akron, Colorado one. It looks very plain, and you can tell that some mint had this generic eagle die on the shelf, and they just said, well, we want to save money. We don't want to make 2 dies for our Akron, Colorado Centennial. We just want to pay for 1 die, you know. So I get 1 die with text on it, and they use an off-the-shelf die for the other side and do it that way. But these are rare, too. I can't remember how many of these I've seen, but it's probably less than 10 for sure. There's a Leadville, Vincent General Hospital in Leadville. These are serial numbered ones. These are pretty neat. They're serial number 337 indicates that there's at least 337 made. I think they probably made 500 of these. A lot of them have been melted over the years, so they're not real easy to find, but they shouldn't cost too much. If you find one, they're probably $40, $50. The School of Mines made several different ones. I was at the School of Mines Geology Museum. And by the way, if you have never been to the School of Mines, they have a geology museum there, and they've got some coins in there too. They have got a full set of Clark Gruber, a full set, all 8 coins. They've got the J.J. Conway 2.5 and 5, and they've got the Parsons 2.5 and 5. These are $250,000 coins we're talking about for a lot of these. And they're the 1861 Clark Gruber $20 gold piece. You can't see it. You can only get like this close because it's in this safe with the glass front on it. You have to look in there. But they have a photograph of it next to it. It looks like it's an MS66 PL. I mean, it would be like far and away the nicest one ever known, and it's like never really been publicized that I know of in the numismatic press or anything. So, but anyway, so I was there visiting there one time, and I got to talk to the curator or whatever, and I was asking them about these, and they dug up some old records where they had sent some Yellow Daisy Mining Company ingots to a place in Arizona to mint these. And these are fairly scarce. I mean, you could get possibly $100 a piece for this one now. But the Yellow Daisy ingots that they had melted to make these out of, they go for a 10-ounce Yellow Daisy bar, they go for about $3,000. So they would be a lot better off. You'd be a lot better off to have the ingots than the coins right now. Anyway, those are 1 ounce. I've also seen 1986 dated ones. They're slightly different. They're kind of scarce too. This is kind of a strange. This is the only picture I have of these. But I was on eBay one time and I saw somebody had these 3, and they're actually 5-ounce ones. And I asked the curator at the museum, at the geology museum at the School of Mines, about these, and he'd never heard of them. He didn't know they even existed. But these are the bids I had to bid to get them. But of course, they're 5-ounce silver. But strangely, this last one, I don't know how that happened. But I was planning to pay $300 and won that one for $90. But I have these 3, 1 of each. They're the only 5-ounce ones I've ever seen. I've never seen another 5-ounce one other than these 3 that I bought. This is the Yuma, Colorado one. This one's really common. I see this one. Sometimes you'll even see this in like a dealer will have a pile of silver rounds, and it'll just be one of the ones in there. So these are really common. They're worth just a nominal amount above the silver value. This one looks, at first you think it looks really similar, but this Otis Colorado Centennial, it has a serial number stamped here, 049. These are really hard to find, and I'd only ever seen one until like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. I saw another one on eBay, and it was serial number like 68 or something like that. And I bid on it, and I lost because it sold for $300. So if you see one of these, just remember an eBay one sold for $300. So, and I've only ever seen 2. This one here, and the eBay one. This one I like quite a bit, and I would like to find one a little bit. This one's not bad condition, but I'd like to find a better one than this. But this is Salida with the railroads and everything on it. Really, pretty fancy design. And this one had the edge number 011. So don't know how many were made, but this is the only one I've ever seen of this Salida round. But if this were to auction on eBay, it'd probably sell for $500 right now, I would guess. But I don't know. It's a crapshoot. There's the Denver Mining Club one, 1991, so it's not that old. It's not a very good picture, but they made silver rounds. They asked me to go give a talk at one of their meetings, and I brought that down, and nobody in the club had ever seen it and even knew about it. It's their club, and they didn't even know that it existed. So I think it's kind of scarce. This is a strange one. Colorado Credit Union Systems, just kind of a commercial 1 ounce round. I've seen these now and then. I've seen maybe a couple dozen of them. Not real rare. I like the mining related ones. This is Park County Mining Association, 1997. This kind of stuff, since it's getting into a newer, more recent time frame, is not worth quite as much, but there's still, these would sell for a good premium. Cripple Creek and Victor, they made quite a few. I actually made some for them. In 2009, I made a 1 ounce silver and a 1/4 ounce gold piece for them. That's the only year they ever had me do it. I was willing to do it more, but they just did it the 1 year. But they've made quite a few different silver and gold rounds over the years. Oh, by the way, if you don't know, they still operate near Victor. It's the largest cyanide leaching heap in the world. They dig all the ore out of the ground. They put it in a big pile. They drip liquid cyanide on top of the pile. The cyanide leaches through and dissolves gold particles in the rock. And they pump the liquid out the bottom, send it to like a shack, like a shack, like a processing place, and they extract the gold out of the cyanide solution and then send the refreshed cyanide solution back to the top. But it takes like a year for the stuff to go through the ground. So it's a 1 year cycle to go all the way through. There's old threshers. Apparently this organization, it has to do with like antique farm equipment or whatever. They made several different ones, and I've seen some that are fairly common, but then other years, they make them different years. There's some of the other ones are rare. Like this is a rarer one that I don't see very often, but some of them are more common and some of them are rare. I haven't really quite figured it out, all the different ones that are made yet. I have to research that some more. This is a place that most people have never heard of, Colorado Mint. There was a place, an entity called the Colorado Mint, and they were just as I was starting to get in the minting business, they were just kind of finally deciding to call it quits. I think I went to one coin show where we overlapped. I went to one coin show where they had a table and they were showing a plaster model of that elk design right there. And they were promoting their minting services. And they were, of all the places this was located, it was up Coal Creek Canyon above Golden. Or was it Golden Gate Canyon? One of the two. Anyway, they made the silver rounds, and basically it's kind of just generic Colorado theme, scenery type stuff. And years ago, I would say something like this would have sold at a discount to spot. But now that there's more people collect this kind of stuff, and these are actually pretty scarce, one like this would sell for like $50 to $80 now, because especially if you identify it as a Colorado Mint piece and market it that way. Here's a couple more. They would come with made in Colorado, USA, and they come with like a little card, certificate, and all that. And there's their logo for Colorado Mint and whatnot. But just about the time I started doing minting, they were closing. They decided to call it quits and sold off their equipment, and that was the end of that. Now I get to the few that I made. I've made quite a few silver rounds over the years, and I'm just going to skip through these real quick. But here's what I would call the first Colorado silver round I made. It's a Denver Mint Centennial piece, 2006, for the 100th anniversary of the Denver Mint. I was commissioned by their sort of charitable organization that was getting gifts for the first crew of the USS Colorado, which is a attack submarine, and which was commissioned a couple years ago. And so they had me mint these, and the ones that say Patriot on them were sold to raise money to buy things for the first crew, like things that they would like to have on the ship or whatever. And but there are also other ones made that say plank owner, and that's a Navy term, which means you're the first crew of a new ship. You're called a plank owner. So the other ones on here, which were not distributed to the public, also say plank owner. So if you see one of those, it's like super hard to get because somebody who was a crew member must have sold it, There's a Rocky Mountain National Park one that I did with the ram, and all right. Well, that's all I have. There's a lot more Colorado silver rounds out there that I've not really documented yet or whatnot, but that's so. What kind of questions? Any questions? Yes, here. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
but they didn't make them in the quarters. So I was wondering if like at one point you would like to make them.
Okay, so the question was, you asked me to repeat the question for the video. The question was about the 1931 quarters that were skipped. The U.S. Mint made no quarters in 1931, and the question is, would I consider making one? And the answer is yes, because I already did. I made a 1931 S quarter, and another year I could. It was a standing liberty. I mean, the Washington quarter is another one that I could potentially make, but Washington quarters also skipped 1933, so I also made 1933 Washington quarters and 1931 standing liberty quarters. So they're out there. They sell for a couple $100 though, but you see them on eBay now and then. But it was I made those. Geez, it's got to be 12, 15 years ago. So they're dispersed and they're out there, but they're not seen very often. Yeah, we'll go ahead.
The round that you made for the U.S. Mint, was that for the Mint, or did you just do that yourself?
No, this one I did this myself, and it was yeah. Well, I knew that in 2004, I knew that several things were going to be happening. It was going to be the Colorado State Quarter was going to come out in 2006. It was going to be the 100th anniversary of the state of Colorado, and or the 150th, and it was also going to be the big A&A show, the summer show, was also going to be in Denver that year. So I started writing everywhere, because the Mint can't make anything like this that's monetized unless Congress makes the authorization. So I wrote to all the Congress people and said, look, here's the Denver Mint Centennial coming up. Make a medal for the Denver Mint Centennial. And nobody did anything. The only letter I got back from anyone, I think John Hickenlooper, mayor of Denver, of course, he had no authority to do anything like that. He just wrote some little blurb wrote back, but no, nothing ever happened. But then I realized, well, maybe that's a good thing because it gives me the opening to do one because the Mint didn't. So I made these, and I was having them at a coin show, and a guy from the Denver Mint came by, and he said, oh, these are neat. And he said, did you know that the Denver Mint did make a 100th anniversary medal? I said, really? And he said, it was only going to be given out to employees, but the Philadelphia Mint got wind of the thing and squashed it. I shouldn't say Philadelphia Mint. I mean the Mint headquarters in Washington decided to squash the whole idea. And he said that they made like a couple hundred of them, and they're still sitting in a vault in the Denver Mint, and no one's ever seen them. So I don't know how true that story is, but I made brass, silver, and gold and palladium ones. Yes. I made about 200 brass, about 200 silver, 5 in palladium, and 5 in gold. The gold and palladium ones say, like this one here is a silver one. It says 1 troy ounce silver. Of course, the brass ones don't have that. They're blank down there. And then the palladium one, I actually engraved a special die for the palladium one, just to strike 5 pieces. And it says, 9995 palladium. And the gold one also says gold down there. And the gold one is 50 grams, so it's 1.6 ounces of gold. So when I was not sure if I wanted to make the gold one or not. So I posted a thing out on the PCGS message board. I said, if I made 5 of these and they cost, whatever price at the time, which is quite a bit above melt, would anybody buy one? And one fellow came back and said, I'll buy all 5. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll let you buy 3. So I sold him 3, and I kept 1, and I sold 1 to John Dean. So, yeah. Well, he helped me with my coin press, so like reprogramming it and stuff. So,
I also have some of the gold Colorado. He has that. 100-year centennial.
Yes, I hate to brag. I actually have 3 of those because whenever I see them, it's like I almost always buy them when I see them. But I mean, there's only I think there's like only one I've ever seen that I didn't buy. But yeah, I think John has one too.
You have 3 of them?
I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think you should sell one.
I probably should. Yes. Sorry.
I noticed a couple coins like focus on the year like 1933. Was there something like unique or special with that year, more that's what you collect, or something happened that year?
Well, it was the World's Fair in Chicago, or the Century of Progress exposition. So it was a big deal at the time. and they were sort of trying to work their way out. Everybody's trying to work their way out of the Great Depression at the time, and so there was a lot of, and Colorado being a silver mining state, they kind of wanted to promote silver as being used for money, especially when gold was sort of withdrawn from currency in 1933. I think the silver mining interests in Colorado especially wanted to promote silver as money, and so that's why a lot of those are made, is to give out and also to raise money for the Colorado building, which there was a pretty fancy Colorado building built at the exposition there, I think. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Anybody else have any questions? Dan, was that say $20 on that US?
Yeah, I did, because at the time I decided, I just felt like I wanted to make it a token instead of a medal, so I wanted to put like a symbolic face value on there, just for the heck of it. Yeah. Oh, oh.
Brian money was
Yes.
part of like the free silver movement that was around the Lesher.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Brian. Yeah. Brian was the presidential candidate of 1896, and he was up against Grover Cleveland, I believe. Grover Cleveland was in line with the Eastern banking interests, and they wanted a gold-only standard. Brian was a big proponent of having a bimetallic standard, which means that, and their phrase was 16-1, meaning 1 ounce of gold and 16 ounces of silver are worth the same. So Brian wanted silver to be treated like gold and be a reserve asset and do what was called free coinage of silver, which means however much silver a mine could produce, they would give it to the mint and they could get it made into coin. It didn't matter how much. But Brian lost in the election, so the bimetallism never really caught on. I wasn't a big Brian fan because he was famous later years for arguing against Clarence Darrow in the education court case about teaching evolution in schools or something like that. But I do think, though, that if they had free coinage of silver, we might not have had the Great Depression.